The screams beyond the tree line. Hiking alone is supposed to be peaceful, quiet, a way to reset your mind. But sometimes the quiet isn't calm at all. Sometimes it's a warning, a signal that the forest is holding its breath, waiting. I didn't understand that until the night Birch Hollow almost swallowed me alive. I reached the trail just before sunset, the sky melting into deep orange and dark purple. The air smelled of pine and cold, wet leaves. The trail was supposed to be easy 5 kilometers. Well marked, nothing dangerous. At least that's what the brochure said. The ranger station was locked. But what bothered me was the sign on the door, handwritten shaky letters. Trail closed at dusk, do not enter. I drove for 3 hours. I wasn't turning back. I opened the gate and slipped in. The forest swallowed me quickly. Tall birch trees leaned over the path like guards, their branches forming a jagged canopy. My boots crunched through dead leaves, the only sound aside from wind brushing against high branches. For the first 30 minutes, it felt normal, calm, almost soothing. Then the sun dipped lower, the light thinned out, and the forest changed. The air got heavier. The trees seemed to press closer, their trunks tightly packed like they didn't want me there. And then I heard it. The scream. Sharp. Broken. Piercing the quiet like a knife. I froze instantly, every muscle in my body locked up. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. It was something stuck between the two, something that didn't belong in any forest I'd ever known. The scream faded, and the silence that followed was worse. Dead silence. Even the wind died. It felt like the whole forest was waiting for my reaction. When nothing else happened, I forced myself to breathe and convinced myself it had to be a fox. Maybe a bobcat. Maybe my imagination. I adjusted my backpack and kept walking. But the forest wasn't silent anymore. There were footsteps. Soft ones. Light. Keeping perfect pace with mine, but always just far enough behind that I couldn't see anything when I turned around. Every hair on my neck stood up about an hour in. The trail opened into a clearing with an old campsite, 2 collapsed tents, a long dead fire pit, and discarded gear scattered like someone ran without packing. A metallic chill ran up my spine. I stepped closer and noticed one of the tents was torn wide open. The flap was smeared with dark streaks. Mud, maybe, but it looked wrong. Thick, sticky, like something had been dragged. The ground around the tents was worse, deep gouges carved into the soil like claw marks, each one deeper than any animal should have been able to make. A sharp snap behind me made me whirl around. Nothing, no people, no animals, only rows of trees standing unnaturally still, as if they were holding their breath too. Then the scream ripped through the air again, much closer this time. My knees almost buckled. The temperature dropped so sharply my breath fogged in front of me. Leaves rustled above. Branches creaked. Something was moving in the canopy. I pointed my flashlight upward. At first I saw nothing but tangled branches. Then one of the branches shifted. No, it wasn't a branch. It was a hand, pale and stretched. Fingers too long, curled around the bark like a spider gripping its prey. Ice flooded my veins. The scream came a third time so loud it vibrated the air around me. I bolted. The trail looked completely different now. Twisted. Wrong. Every tree looked the same, each one blending into the next. The path narrowed until it felt more like the forest was trying to push me out or swallow me whole. Behind me, the footsteps returned, but no longer soft. They were pounding, heavy, rushing through the underbrush like something much larger than a person. I ran faster, lungs burning, heart punching against my ribs. But the footsteps weren't only behind me now. Something was moving above me again, leaping from branch to branch, always just out of sight but too close to ignore. It felt like being hunted. I sprinted blindly through the darkness, searching for the next trail marker, but they were gone. Every single one. Stripped clean off the trees like someone didn't want anyone finding their way out. My foot caught on a root and I stumbled forward, scraping my hands as I pushed myself up. Another scream erupted behind me. This one was furious, close enough that I felt my bones ring from the sound. The forest shook. I forced myself forward, adrenaline doing the thinking for me. Then finally I saw it, a thin line of moonlight, an opening. The tree line. I pushed myself harder, legs barely responding, vision blurry. I burst out of the forest and collapsed onto the gravel road by the ranger station, gasping like I'd been underwater for hours. Behind me, everything went quiet again. I turned slowly. The forest stood pitch black, unmoving. Every tree was a silhouette except for one shape that wasn't a tree at all. Something stood between the trunks, tall, thin, bent in ways a person couldn't bend. Its limbs hung like they were too heavy. Its head tilted, watching me. A whisper drifted out from the darkness, soft, broken, but unmistakably directed at me. I couldn't understand it, but I knew one thing. It wanted me gone. I sprinted to my car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot. So fast, gravel sprayed behind me. I didn't stop until I reached the highway miles away. The next morning, I called the ranger station. A man answered with a tired voice. When I told him what I'd seen, he went silent for a long time before speaking. "That trail's been closed for years," he said quietly. "People go missing out there. We keep putting up warning signs, but people keep ignoring them." I asked what he meant by missing. He only replied, "If you heard it, you're lucky it didn't find you. I haven't hiked alone since that night, and sometimes when everything is quiet, I still hear that scream. Faint, far away, but getting closer." Footsteps on the empty trail. The hikers on the Cedar Ridge Trail always warned each other about the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that felt heavy, like the woods were holding their breath, but Kevin didn't believe in superstition. He believed in getting away from the city, clearing his mind, and enjoying a quiet afternoon alone. That belief would be the last comfortable thought he ever had. It was late afternoon when he started his walk. The sun was hidden behind a blanket of gray clouds, and the forest looked washed out and tired. Leaves carpeted the ground in dull shades of brown. The trail, usually busy with people on weekends, was empty, but Kevin didn't mind. Solitude was the point. For the first 20 minutes, everything felt normal. His boots crunched softly against the cold dirt. A few birds rustled from branch to branch. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped steadily from melting frost. It was the peaceful quiet he always loved. But then, the footsteps started. At first, they were faint. He thought they were just echoes of his own movement sound bouncing strangely in the open space. But then they began to fall out of rhythm. When he stopped, they stopped a second later. When he continued, they started again, softer and slower, as if whoever or whatever was following him didn't want to be noticed. Kevin turned around to look. Nothing. Just the narrow trail stretching back into the trees. He frowned, shook off the uneasy feeling, and kept walking, but he wasn't imagining it. The footsteps returned, steady but light, almost cautious. They followed at the same distance for several minutes. Whenever he looked back, Trailotad's trail remained empty, but the sense of being watched grew stronger. He finally tried calling out, "Hello? Someone there?" His voice bounced off the trees and faded. No answer, only the quiet. Kevin tightened the straps of his backpack and walked faster. The quiet footsteps behind him kept pace. Soon the trail dipped into a darker section of the forest. Here, the pines grew so close their branches interlocked above, blocking the remaining daylight. The air became colder, damp, and stale. Kevin's breath showed in pale clouds. The forest around him felt claustrophobic, as if the trees themselves were listening. That's when he noticed the trail markers were gone. Cedar Ridge was always marked with bright orange tags nailed to the trees, one every 100 feet, but the last 3 trees he passed had no markers, only old, dark scars where nails used to be. Someone had torn them off. Kevin's stomach tightened. He checked his phone, but of course, there was no signal. The footsteps stopped again. He turned slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. This time he saw something, a figure standing just beyond the tree line, half hidden behind a trunk, tall, still, watching him. Kevin's heart slammed against his ribs. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He blinked, and in that moment, the figure slipped sideways behind the trees with unnatural smoothness, too fast, too silent. The forest swallowed it. Panic spread through his body like ice. He didn't care what it was anymore. He needed to leave. He started walking again, faster this time, nearly jogging. The trail bent sharply, sloping downhill, and Kevin nearly slipped on the wet leaves. Behind him, and the footsteps returned. But now they weren't light or hesitant. They were quick, purposeful, getting closer. Kevin didn't dare look back. He broke into a run. The forest blurred around him. Branches whipped his arms. Leaves tore under his shoes. His breath became sharp and painful. But the footsteps behind him grew louder, heavier, not running, but striding long, slow, confident strides that didn't need speed to catch up. Then the forest changed. The air grew colder than before, almost freezing. The trees looked dead, bark peeling, branches twisted. A horrible smell drifted through the air like something rotting beneath the soil. Kevin's foot caught on a root, and he crashed to the ground, pain exploding through his knee. Dirt filled his palms. He scrambled to get up and froze. The footsteps stopped right behind him. Slow, wet breathing filled the air. Not human, not animal. Something towered above him. He didn't turn around, he couldn't. His body refused to move. Tears blurred his vision. The breathing grew closer, warm and foul against the back of his neck. Then it whispered not a word, not a language, just a low, distorted sound filled with hunger. Kevin lunged forward in blind terror, forcing himself up. He ran without thinking, without direction. All he wanted was out of the trees, out of the cold, out of reach of the thing behind him. The forest thinned. Light appeared ahead. He burst from the tree line, stumbling onto a gravel parking lot. His car was only 20 feet away. He sprinted to it, yanked the door open, and threw himself inside, locking the doors. The forest behind him went silent. Kevin tried to catch his breath. His entire body shook violently, but nothing followed him out of the trees. No footsteps, no shadow, no breathing. Just stillness. He stared at the tree line. For a moment, he thought he saw something tall and crooked standing between the trunks, watching him waiting. But when he blinked, it was gone. Kevin drove away so fast, he almost crashed twice on the winding road. He never returned to Cedar Ridge. The trail remained closed 2 months later, marked off with bright yellow tape. Some hikers say they hear footsteps behind them when they walk near that area. Some say they see a figure between the trees. And some say the forest itself whispers warnings, but only to those who are too late to listen. The lost hiker who walked backwards. For years, the Black Pine Reserve had been considered safe. Families camped there, photographers took pictures of the waterfalls, and experienced hikers loved the deep forest trails. But every now and then, someone would go missing. No bodies, no clues, just missing. Locals had an explanation, a legend about a hiker who got lost decades ago and still wandered the woods, walking backwards so no one could follow his tracks. Most people thought it was just a story. Liam wasn't the type to believe in legends either. He was a weekend hiker, always looking for new trails, new viewpoints, new places to clear his mind. When his coworker told him about the Black Pine Summit Trail, he added it to his list. A 7-kilometer loop with a beautiful overlook, easy enough. He arrived early on a cold morning, the sun barely rising and mist slithering across the ground. The trail was empty, but that didn't bother him. The clean scent of pine, the soft hum of wind, the quiet, it all felt perfect. But an hour into the hike, he noticed something strange. Footprints in the mud beside the trail. At first, this didn't surprise him. Plenty of hikers came through here. But Liam froze when he crouched down and took a closer look. The footprints were deep at the heel and light at the toes. Whoever made them was walking backwards. He stood up slowly, heart thudding. The prints continued for several meters, perfectly straight, perfectly spaced, as if the person making them never stumbled, never looked back, never hesitated. Liam tried to laugh it off. Someone was playing a prank. A weird one, but still a prank. He continued walking, but the forest no longer felt calm. The trees grew denser, leaning together like they were whispering secrets he wasn't supposed to hear. The wind had died too, leaving the atmosphere suffocatingly still. Then Liam noticed a second set of prints. These were fresh. Very fresh. And they weren't in the mud now, they were on the trail directly ahead of him. Crisp, deep, heel first. Someone had walked backward along this exact path only minutes earlier. His skin prickled, and the forest suddenly felt much, much larger. And he felt very, very alone. He followed the prints carefully, each one drawing him deeper into a darker part of the woods. The trees blocked more of the sky, turning the path into a tunnel. Liam's breath grew shaky. Then, the footprints stopped. They didn't turn around. They didn't veer off the trail. They just ended in the middle of the path, like whoever made them vanished into thin air. Liam slowly backed away. A twig snapped behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Just thick trees and shadow. Another twig snapped, this time to his left. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. "Hello?" he called, voice cracking slightly. "Is someone out there? Are you okay?" Silence. Liam forced a shaky breath and continued walking faster now. Every sound made him flinch. The rustle of leaves, the creak of old branches, the wind, except the wind, had stopped earlier. So, what was making the leaves move? He glanced behind him again. Footprints, fresh ones, leading backward. He stared, horrified. These weren't the footprints ahead of him. These were new. These were behind him. Someone had taken several backward steps on the trail he had just walked, but he hadn't heard anything. He hadn't seen anything. He wasn't alone. Liam started walking faster. Then he broke into a jog. His breathing grew rough, panic tightening around his ribs. The trail curved sharply around a cluster of old dark pines, and as he turned, he froze. A figure stood on the path, facing away from him, motionless. It was a man tall, wearing a torn hiking jacket, his hair long and matted. His posture was rigid, head slightly tilted as if listening to something Liam couldn't hear. Then the man lifted one foot and stepped backward. Liam stumbled, nearly falling as he scrambled behind a tree. He pressed his hand against his mouth to keep from gasping too loudly. The man took another backward step, and another. Every movement was slow, deliberate, perfectly controlled. His feet landed exactly in the center of the trail, toe lifting slightly before hitting the ground heel first. Liam stayed hidden, breath shaking. The man moved silently past the tree he was behind. Then he stopped. His head turned not forward, but backward, as if his neck didn't bend like a normal human's. His face rotated toward Liam, inch by inch, until it was completely reversed. The eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark, too empty. The man's mouth twitched upward, forming a jagged smile. Then he sprinted backward. It didn't look like running. It looked like being dragged by invisible strings, his limbs jerking unnaturally, but moving impossibly fast. Trees blurred behind him as he barreled down the trail, closing the distance with horrifying speed. Liam ran. Branches whipped his arms, roots caught his shoes, rocks nearly sent him tumbling. His lungs burned, but adrenaline kept him going. He didn't look back. He didn't want to see how close the backward walking man was. The trail split ahead, two paths leading into shadow. He chose the left one instinctively. The forest seemed to twist around him. The trees leaned in, the trail narrowing like something was forcing him deeper. He could still hear footsteps behind him, but they weren't steady now. They were frantic, scraping, dragging, yet still moving quickly. Then the trail opened. The parking lot appeared ahead like a miracle. Desolate, silent, blessedly open. Liam burst out of the trees, stumbling toward his car. He fumbled with the keys, nearly dropping them as he unlocked the door and threw himself inside. He locked the doors. Silence. Liam stared at the tree line. For a moment, everything was still. Then he saw him. The man standing at the edge of the forest, back turned, perfectly still, slowly lifting one foot, heel first. Liam sped away. He never returned to Black Pine Reserve. But some nights, when he parks his car on quiet streets or walks a lonely sidewalk, he swears he hears footsteps behind him, always falling just out of rhythm with his own, always walking backward. Whispers from the abandoned campsite. The Maplewood Highlands Trail had a reputation, not for its beauty, though it had plenty, but for the way hikers always rushed to finish before sunset. Ask any local guide and they'd say the same thing: you don't want to be in the woods after dark. Not near the old campsite. Most hikers dismissed it as a ghost story, but Ethan was curious by nature. When he heard the rumors about an abandoned campsite deep in the woods, untouched for years, left exactly as it was found. After a group vanished one night, he decided to hike the trail alone. It was late afternoon when he started. The forest was unusually quiet. The tall spruce trees blocked most of the sunlight, casting long, thin shadows across the path. The deeper Ethan went, the colder the air grew, and the more he noticed the silence. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth. As he walked, he noticed a break in the trees where the trail narrowed. A small wooden sign leaned crookedly against a boulder. The words Campsite 12 were barely visible beneath a layer of moss. His heart quickened. This was the place. He followed the faint side path, pushing through branches that seemed more tangled than any natural forest should be. After a few minutes, the trees opened to a small clearing, and there it was. The abandoned campsite. 3 tents stood in a semicircle, covered in dirt and mold. Their fabric shredded in places. A rusted camping stove sat near a fire pit filled with ash that hadn't been disturbed in years. A backpack lay on its side, straps torn, half buried in dead leaves. Everything looked as if it had been frozen in time. Ethan stepped closer, frowning. Why would anyone leave everything behind? That's when he heard it. A whisper, soft, faint, coming from inside one of the tents. He froze. Every instinct told him to leave, but curiosity pulled him forward. He crouched beside the tent and listened. At first, it was impossible to make out the words. Just a low murmur, like several voices speaking at once, but too quietly to understand. Then the whispering stopped. Ethan slowly stood up, heart pounding. He turned to leave the clearing and heard something behind him, the soft crunch of footsteps on dry leaves. He spun around. No one. The tent stood perfectly still, flaps unmoving. The trees surrounding the clearing didn't sway. The air was too cold for wind. Another whisper drifted from the far side of the clearing. This one clearer: "Don't stay." Ethan's skin prickled. The voice sounded close, too close, but the clearing was empty. He took a step back. His boot landed on something soft. When he lifted his foot, he froze. A footprint. Fresh. Deep. Larger than his own. He wasn't alone. The trees at the edge of the clearing seemed to shift slightly. A shadow moved between them, tall and narrow. Ethan swallowed hard. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to walk, not run, toward the path he came from. Running felt like it would attract attention, but as he reached the tree line, another whisper coiled around his ear. "Don't turn around." His entire body stiffened. The voice sounded like it came from inches behind him. Slowly, breath shaking, Ethan stepped back onto the trail and began walking. His legs felt heavy, his throat dry. Every few seconds he heard soft footsteps behind him. They weren't rushed. They were calm, controlled, as if something was following him, matching his pace, but staying just out of sight. Branches creaked overhead. Whispers floated around him, circling like cold wind. "Don't leave us, stay." He walked faster. The footsteps behind him grew louder. The forest felt darker now, as if the sun had suddenly dropped lower. Shadows stretched across the trail, reaching toward his feet. Ethan kept his eyes forward, refusing to look back. Then something grabbed his backpack. He jerked forward with a sharp gasp, stumbling. He didn't dare turn, but whatever held the strap pulled again, slowly, steadily, trying to stop him. Ethan tore the strap free and sprinted. The whispers exploded into frantic voices behind him. "Stay! Don't run! Don't leave us! Come back!" Branches snapped violently. Footsteps pounded the ground. Something large crashed through the undergrowth behind him, too fast, too loud to be human. Ethan ran blindly, lungs burning, legs screaming. The trail twisted and dipped, and twice he nearly fell, but he didn't stop, didn't look back. The whispers kept growing louder, overlapping until they became a shrieking chorus, and then silence. Ethan burst out of the forest and stumbled into the parking lot. The sudden daylight hurt his eyes. He ran to his car, ripped the door open, and slammed it shut before locking the doors. His chest heaved. Sweat dripped down his face. The forest behind him was motionless. He stared at the tree line. Nothing moved. No whispers, no footsteps, no shadows. Ethan started his car with trembling hands. As he backed out, he noticed something on his rear window, something smeared across the glass in the dirt and dust of the forest. A handprint, large, smudged, pressed against the outside of the window. Ethan drove away without looking back. He told no one about what happened, but a few months later, hikers who passed Campsite 12 began reporting something new. A fresh backpack lying in the clearing, half buried in leaves, Ethan's backpack, and beside it, the soft whisper of someone walking just behind them, always asking the same thing, "Stay with us." The shadow, following us, up the mountain. Lena always said, Blackthorn Mountain wasn't cursed, it was watching, and on the morning we climbed it, I finally understood what she meant. The wind pushed hard against our jackets as we began the hike, the early light barely touching the jagged rocks above us. Lena walked ahead with her usual stubborn courage, her ponytail swinging like she was marching into battle. I followed a few steps behind, holding tightly to the worn journal we found in our mother's old backpack. Her final entry ended with one chilling sentence. "It's following me up the mountain." We didn't come for closure, we came for answers. By the first hour, the trail vanished beneath thick pine needles, and the air felt heavier, almost damp, like breath, against the back of my neck. Birds didn't sing here. Even the insects seemed to have abandoned this part of the mountain. Crunch, not our step. Lena turned slightly. "You heard that? Yeah, crunch. Slow, heavy, unmistakable." We didn't need to say anything. We just kept walking, our pace quicker now, but not panicked, not yet. Our boots slapped the ground too loudly, echoing against the rocks as if announcing our location. Lena whispered, "Don't look back." That's how fear wins. But the instinct to look was overwhelming, like hands tightening around my shoulders. The forest behind us felt alive, breathing, waiting. Another crunch. It matched our rhythm, step for step, breath for breath. We continued climbing until the trees crowded tighter around us, their dark branches bending as though eavesdropping. The deeper we went, the colder the air became, despite the afternoon sun overhead. Finally, I couldn't stop myself. I turned. At first, I saw only shadows between the trees, tall, crooked, shifting. Then one of them moved. Not like an animal, not like a person, more like smoke trying to pretend it had bones. Wani, I breathed, but when I blinked, it was gone. Only the trees remained, standing too still. Lena grabbed my sleeve. "Keep moving. Whatever it is, it doesn't want us to stop." We reached a steep rocky incline. The wind howled harder now, making it nearly impossible to hear anything except the pounding of blood in my ears. But I could feel it the same way you feel someone standing behind you in a dark room watching, measuring. Lena barely paused as she climbed the last few feet up the ridge. The journal says she made it to the upper cliffs. We're close. That word made everything worse. As soon as we stood on the ledge, the world expanded beneath us, endless forest stretching into the blue horizon. But behind us, the trail remained swallowed in shadow, and something inside it shifted. We sat only long enough to drink water. The wind whipped across the ledge, carrying a low, groaning sound I first mistook for trees bending, but the groan rose and fell like breathing. Not human breathing, something old, something cold. We go, Lena said quickly. Now the upper trail was narrower, slicing between two towering rock walls. Just a few meters in, I felt it again, a weight behind us. I turned sharply. At the trail's mouth, the shadow stood clear, tall, thin, human-shaped but wrong. Its arms hung too long, its legs bent slightly backward like it was built to climb things that weren't meant to be climbed, and its head tilted, as if studying us. My voice cracked. Lena, she saw it too. Don't let it get close. We moved fast, almost running our boots scraping against stone. The narrow canyon funneled us forward, deeper into the mountain's throat behind us. The steps returned, no longer mimicking us, chasing us. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was faster now. We burst out of the tight corridor onto a wide plateau covered in gray dust. At the far end stood the old avalanche shelter, just a wooden shack barely held together by rusted nails and stubbornness. Inside, Lena shouted. We sprinted. The steps behind us multiplied like one shadow had become many. By the time we slammed the shelter door and dropped the wooden beam into place, the pounding reached the walls. Thud, thud, the planks rattled. The dust on the floor trembled with each hit. Lena pressed her back against the door, breath shaking. Mom wrote she hid here, but she didn't write how she got out. Outside, the footsteps circled slowly. A soft scraping sound moved along the walls like claws dragging across wood. Then silence. Stillness pressed into the room. My chest tightened. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. It's waiting. We stayed frozen until the sky outside darkened into a deep blue. The silence didn't feel safe. It felt patient, hungry. When the moon rose, pale through the cracks, Lena looked at me. We can't stay. I swallowed hard. It's out there. I know. We lifted the wooden beam together. The moment it touched the floor, a low exhale drifted through the cracks. Like a creature realizing its prey had finally made a decision, Lena pulled the door open. Night spilled in. Cold, sharp, still. The shadow stood only a few feet away, and this time, it didn't hide. It stepped forward, and the mountains swallowed our screams into the wind.